Need a little luxury in your life? That's why I recently treated myself to a staycation at the Inn at 500 Capital. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway, a special celebration, or just a break from routine, you're going to love their Four Diamond Boutique experience with gorgeous rooms, penthouses, and suites right in the heart of downtown Boise. You'll be greeted with a complimentary drink on arrival, have access to free shuttle service, and even your pet is welcome. And here's an insider tip: book more than one night and save with their weekend escape rate. Book your stay now at inat500.com. Today on CityCast Boise, Treefort Music Fest has officially taken over our city this week, but what actually happens behind the scenes? We're peeling back the curtain to uncover what your favorite bands were like to work with, which musician had the most unusual requests, and who showed up chauffeured by a Rod Stewart lookalike. This is Treefort like you've never heard it before. It's Wednesday, March 26th. I'm Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. I'm chatting with Eric Gilbert, director and co-founder of Treefort Music Fest. Thanks for making time to talk with us today, Eric.
Thanks for having me.
Boise has changed quite a bit in the past 13 years. So what would you say is the biggest challenge putting on a music festival now compared to the first time you launched in 2012?
Yeah, in 2012, that time, if you recall, the Great Recession was in 2008. It was an exciting time in Boise. A lot of people were kind of refocusing back toward home, and but there was a lot of empty space in downtown Boise still. And, that was a big part of what we were interested in. It was activating that empty space. At that time, the Linen District was a big part of that. But there was, so historically with Treefort, we've activated a lot of empty buildings. And the challenge now is that there's the only place left for like big outdoor event like ours is the parks. And so we've had to adjust over time. And in part, like us acquiring what was El Cor Shrine, now Shrine Social Club, building our own venue. I mean, it was kind of out of necessity to some degree. For me, I love that Treefort Music Hall flipped an office depot into an art space. And so I think it's really important for cities as they grow to make sure to claim and maintain space for music and art. There's definitely like a rejuvenation of young people that feel like Boise is the kind of city that they could live in. And I think, music is a big part of that. And the fact that there's a thriving music scene now is a big difference from where it was in 2011 at the time when it was just the early signs of what we have today.
And Eric, this isn't going to be a surprise to any of our listeners, but Boise weather in March is unpredictable at best.
I haven't noticed, but yeah, cool.
I knew that would be surprising for you. What's the most wild weather event that Treefort's had to deal with, and how did your team handle it? Or how did the artist or band affected handle it?
Well, I mean, the cold years are cool. I have a few stories. I would start with, there was the year that Charles Bradley played. There was a big snowstorm in Denver like the day before he was supposed to play. And they're like, we can only get to Salt Lake City. And we're just like, wait a minute, we can figure this out. And so there was a Rod Stewart limo driver here. He cosplayed at Rod Stewart and was a limo driver. And we'd used him for the festival before. And we recruited him to drive all the way to Salt Lake City as Rod Stewart in a limo with all of the green room, like rider requests for Charles Bradley's band. I mean, that's just to be like, think you're not going to make it, and then all of a sudden you're being driven for 5.5 hours by Rod Stewart to Boise to play your set on the main stage. That was one of the more epic, creative solutions we came up with to get an artist here.
That would be incredibly unexpected, I think. If I was an artist, that would get me to Boise for sure.
Yeah, and it goes, all those little touches, like that's one thing as artists, like if you tour a lot, like it starts becoming a little redundant. And so one of the things I think Treefort has, won a lot of artists over because it puts a personal touch on it. We have all these like artist bags that are decorated by kids and people in the community, and it has this personal touch on it that artists don't always get. And I think the battle with the elements is actually an interesting thing, right? And it's fascinating. One of more recently in our first year in the park, I love there was this country duo from Africa that came to play, and we were also featuring this documentary on them at Filmfort. And it was their first time ever seeing snow. They went up to Bogus and went sledding for the first time. And then during their set at the park, it was like snowing kind of lightly, but flurries. And I didn't think they liked the cold, but they were just so enamored with the beauty of the snow coming down, which I thought was a special moment. My other last story, and this is related to like what living in Boise can be like, but I remember, in fact, it was an Easter Sunday that year. It snowed quite a bit late Saturday night, so we woke up to probably an inch or two of snow all across like the main stage and all everywhere. But like by 1 p.m. when the show started, it all melted and it was sunny out. And I remember a lot of the people that don't live here were like, what is even happening here? This is amazing. It's like winter one day and spring the next. So, yeah.
So the unpredictability can maybe add to the charm of the festival.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it serves a really great purpose for the broader city of Boise, to be, as opposed to being during a time when there's lots of events, we're actually filling a time period when we're helping launch the event season. And that's how it functions for a lot of artists too. So being early in the season there's a magic to it and in the unpredictability too, which is part of the magic.
In 2020, you had to cancel the festival just days before the event because of the pandemic, obviously. But besides that year, has there been a time when the festival almost didn't happen?
Looking back on the first year, I would say would be that the year that it almost didn't happen too, in the sense that I remember like this, going into January, we still didn't know where the main stage was going to be. There was just a lot of newness to figuring out how the festival was going to work. And in retrospect, the fact that we kind of pulled it together in 6 months, we didn't really, I didn't hit the ground running as officially leading the charge until October 1st of 2011. And the festival happened in March of, now that it's a year-round project. So, no, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why, that it's a fragile thing. I think it has a lot of enduring powers, but it's not I would say that every year I never feel like it's guaranteed to happen. It's put that way, right? So, yeah.
So you're not taking it for granted?
Not taking it for granted, no. I mean, it may look like it from the outside, which I appreciate if that's the case, but no.
We can keep perpetuating that narrative if you'd like us to.
Yes.
Still getting around to that fix on your car? You got this. On eBay, you'll find millions of parts guaranteed to fit. Doesn't matter if it's a major engine repair or your first time swapping your windshield wipers. eBay has that part you need, ready to click perfectly into place for changes big and small. Loud or quiet, find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. But you already know that. eBay. Things, people, love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
At Patron, we craft our tequila using high-quality natural ingredients without additives. No sweeteners, no extracts, no secrets. In fact, Patron's secret ingredient is that we have no secret ingredients. Just 100% additive-free tequila, made with 100% Weber Blue Agave, water, and thyme. Patron, 100% additive-free tequila. Visit patrontequila.com to learn more. The perfect way to enjoy Patron is responsibly. Copyright 2025, imported by Patron Spirits Company, Coral Gables, Florida. Tequila 40% ABV.
Eric, you have hundreds of bands traveling from all over the country and even internationally. So what's been one of the most dramatic changes to lineup? Because, travel schedules get wonky, planes are late. What happened and how did your team handle it? Or how did the Treefort audience take it?
So we've had to deal with this a few times. The second year, Animal Collective was our biggest headliner and canceled a week before the festival. We ended up just shifting Dan Deacon up to that spot, and it was one of the more legendary Treefort sets. And it was I haven't thought of that in a while. It's a pretty magical moment. But another one I really like is Angelique Kidjo had to cancel. Her vocal cords weren't working. Half the band was already in Boise, and so we had just booked this guy Josh E. Soul to play at the festival for the first time, and I'd heard his set the night before was really great. So I went and met him over at the Reef, and I was like, hey, because he was asking about playing another set, and I was like, hey, I have an idea. What do you think about playing the main stage tomorrow night? He's like, yeah, well, what time? I was like, 8:30 as the headliner. And it was pretty awesome. He was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, I'm serious. I think you can do it. He showed up the next day and crushed it. And he became kind of a Boise legend since, and it's been a couple years since he's played. So one of the things I love about our festival is it's not relying on any one artists. It is truly for music fans who love music and are kind of open to something like that. And that's happened a couple of times since, and we've called headliners in at the last minute. And yeah, once again, it's part of the adventure of it all.
That is kind of, so I went to Treefort for the first time last year, actually. And that was kind of part of the vibe, is there was just kind of a rolling with it sort of feeling to it that did feel kind of unique to Boise. I think Boise's typically a kind of straight-laced, stick with the schedule kind of place. But there was definitely this vibe of just like, whatever happens, happens. Like, we're just here, we're having fun. Like,
yeah,
whatever the vibe is, we're good with it. And I thought that was a really unique thing to be experiencing in Boise.
Yeah, thanks. I also think there's a lot of different ways that people experience Treefort, because I think that's a great way to experience it for someone who hasn't been before. Just go and roll around and follow your muse and see what you discover. But there are also this layer of Treefort goers that are very hardcore, and they like listen to every band and they plan their schedule out. And one of the things I love is really unknown bands are always shocked. They're about to play at, say, the Neurolux at 7:00, and like the room is like empty, and they're like, oh, what's going to happen? And then all of a sudden, all these people show up on time for their set, and it's cool. So yes and no, right? There's different ways to experience it, but there is the freedom to just kind of roll, and there is we as a team kind of, it's important to, with so many moving pieces, like there's inevitably going to be changes and things, and so there's no other way to really approach it mentally than to be prepared to roll with the like punches. So,
what is the weirdest demand that you've ever received from a band or an artist?
I think one of my favorite ones, when Japanese Breakfast was here, on her writer, she requested just to have a dog to come visit and to spend the like day with. And our hospitality crew, who are so amazing and are willing to go the extra mile, went and sourced from one of the shelters a dog for her to spend time with. We also set them up with this very unique lunch at Kin that day, that Kin worked on this unique menu based on the book that she had written. And so I think we love those extra touches. So if people make quote unquote weird requests, it's fun to try to execute on them. But we have almost 500 bands, so we obviously can't do that for everybody.
So maybe if you're one of the bands, get in first with your unique requests so that you can get what you want.
Yes.
What headliners have surprised you the most by how humble they are or how easy they are to work with? I know sometimes these headliners can get reputations of, they're divas, they're hard to work with, it was complicated. So who was really easy to work with?
I would say on the whole, most artists I've encountered tend to be pretty humble and easy to work with. One of the things I love is when artists are willing to kind of go out, and hang out. And I just remember Mac DeMarco, when he played, he was just hanging out everywhere. Like he was, and he was on the streets late night. He was just making himself available as a fan. And we always say it's a common thing. We talk internally and externally about how one thing we love about Treefort is where the bands are fans and the fans are bands. And I just think that helps humanize and normalize a lot of these. And that's one thing we try to approach artist hospitality from that standpoint, that most of them are actually want to just be treated like a normal human. I'm grateful that it's very rare that we're dealing with divas that are sort of like, when there's 500 bands, it's a little awkward when someone is trying to pretend like they're the center of the universe when it's obvious that there's a lot of us there, right? And so, yeah.
Okay, this might be a tricky question, especially with so many artists, so many venues. But what Treefort crowd was the most wild? Like, what artist was playing? What venue was it at? Where afterwards everyone was like, "Wow, that got wild."
So the one that stands out to me is what is now Handlebar in Boise used to be, well, way back in the day it was the Crazy Horse, but during early Treefort days it was the Red Room, and there was this local band Teens at the time that was a real garagey like punk band, and big fan, and they I remember they played late night, I think on Saturday night, and it was one of the wildest shows I've been a part of. It was like basically the crowd was all on stage and everyone was crowd surfing, and the band was, it devolved into barely music, I would say, but it was highly enjoyable. But also like the OCs played one year at the Shrine. It was wild. One thing I love about show going culture is people take care of each other, even though like there's also a willingness to get wild. I remember at that teens show, Megan Stahl, one of the co-founders, crowd surfed, which I just loved. That she just was like, "All right, I'm in," And so also I mentioned that Dan Deacon show. Like that was a really profound moment, I feel like, in the Boise scene, and I think others would say that too. Because if you've ever seen Dan Deacon, he does this thing where he basically flips to where the audience is on the stage. And I just remember, like, that was in 2013. There's a bunch of young kids here who probably had never encountered, I just think it really flipped the concert experience on their head and sort of realized that it's a bigger piece of art than it doesn't have to be so distant from them. Does that make sense? And so I just remember that being a really wild time too. And I just feel like I love seeing these young artists at the time who then started bands and just got really active in the scene. And I don't know if that was the profound moment it was that I think it was for them, but it felt like it.
So we talked about potential divas or people with really interesting rider requests, but have there been any last minute, really dramatic problems with a venue, like a power outage or, pipes burst the morning of or something like that? And how did y'all handle that?
It was a Wednesday night, I believe, first night of the festival, and there was a big rainstorm that came through, and basically the whole block where Tom Graney's, I think, lost power completely, like right before the show was supposed to start. And we had some pretty big talent at Reef. And I called Rocky Johnson at Hannah's, who is an amazing treasure of this city, and because I knew they didn't have anything that night. And we, within like maybe an hour at best, like she basically staffed up, and we were able to take the whole show from Reef and move it over because a transformer had blown in the neighborhood and they weren't going to be able to fix it in time. So there was one other one where the Sonic Temple year, which was which for those that were around, that was the old Masonic temple. We used it for 1 year. It was the 10th year of the festival. It was incredible, and it will probably stand as still like the best Treefort venue ever, but it happened once. But the small room there, during the first band, like a light sconce fell on the ground, and we realized that the vibrations were going to knock more of them off if we didn't do something about it. And the ceiling was like 30 feet in the air. It was huge. So we called one of the masons, and bless his heart, he came down. They had some weird old like lift in the basement there, and we as a whole team were able to get it up there. We're able to get all these light sconces off in the middle of the show and keep on schedule, which was pretty wild. We made some adjustments.
So let's talk about this year's fest a little bit. What's one thing that you are really excited about, you want the audience to know about? Like, what are you most looking forward to?
Well, I just confirmed that Rigskabal is coming back, and this used to be a big hit at the festival, especially because it's during March Madness. It's really, I think it's important because people want to still take part in that. And so Rigskabal is ran by this great friend, Bim Ditson, who played in this band called Ann for a long time. Is now in this band called Help. And he basically has a basketball hoop on the back of his tour van, and he hosts these 3-on-3 band versus band basketball tournaments. And so he's coming back on Saturday and Sunday. It's going to be by the Boise Brewing stage. So if you want to see bands in a different element, sporting it up a bit in a pretty friendly 3-on-3 basketball tournament, I'm excited about that. I'm also really excited. Remy Wolf is one of our headliners. She's amazing, and her band's amazing. I'm just really excited. Really young up-and-comer that I think embodies a lot of what's important to us, and I think that's going to be fun. We have a lot of the sort of Idaho legends to some degree, because Youth Lagoon is playing this year, has not played in quite a while. Built Spill plays most years, and we're always excited to have them, but also Reckless Kelly playing, and Josh Ritter, who's not based here but has Idaho roots. And so I think it feels a little bit more like this really cool like celebration of some of Idaho's best too. And so I'm excited about that representation this year as well, while still having bands from all 20 some countries. And yeah,
do you feel like maybe going into your 13th year, maybe you've reached that like multi-generational, like the bands are coming back and they're celebrating what music is in Boise?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to think of it. And even like a band like Rubble Buckets played for years is back. And that's one thing we think of. We have a lot of bands come back a lot, and a lot of them want to, and we're willing to, because we feel like they're part of the fabric of what we're doing. But I love seeing the arc of their careers, right? And us growing with them. And I do think that it's such a good point about Boise's music scene 13 years later is way more on the map. It's thought of as a music city now, and pre-Treefort and pre a lot of the growth that's happened here, it was invisible to the outside world, especially from like a music scene standpoint. People just didn't know that it had a scene, and so now we have these artists who, a lot of them had previous to this moved away to find their opportunity in the music scene, wanting to come back and be a part of what this is. So yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it.
Well, Eric, thank you so much. I know lots of people are really looking forward to Treefort Music Fest, and thank you for giving us this insider look into a kind of behind the music, what's going on that we don't always see when we're, at the main stage enjoying one of our favorite artists. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate your curiosity. That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. If you enjoyed the show, make sure and subscribe to our Hey Boise newsletter for more Treefort news. We'll be back tomorrow morning to explore the impact of all the anti-LGBTQ bills this session. You won't want to miss it.